A chain clinks. Heavy. Cold. Final. The steel door slams shut behind him. Inmate NA 44291, former officer Nathan Raines, sits alone on the edge of a narrow prison cot, his face hollowed by time and consequence. His hands tremble slightly, but not from fear, from something else. Something deeper, something older. Guilt that has grown teeth. He hasn't seen a dog in 7 years, and certainly not that dog. But today, without warning, the guards pulled him out of his solitary cell, shoved a paper into his hands, and walked away. The headline bled through the wrinkled sheet like a knife to the heart. Found. Missing K9 German Shepherd. Identified after 7 years, still wearing badge collar. The photo below it was grainy, a little out of focus, but Nathan knew that face. Even blurred by years and distance, he'd know that face anywhere. Axel. His lips barely formed the name, but the sound, even a whisper, cracked something deep. 7 years. Gone. 7 years since the raid. Since the blood. Since the prison bars, and now, his K9 partner was back. He clutched the paper to his chest, his shoulders shaking. No one knew what happened that night. No one ever believed him. The department buried him. The court discarded him. And Axel? Vanished during the chaos, presumed dead in the gunfire and confusion. But now, the past had come back, and it wanted something. 1 week earlier, a man at the shelter leaned over the rusty kennel bars, trying to read the barely legible letters on a broken badge still strapped to the dog's neck. Ax3L. Keanchin 72. The dog hadn't eaten in 2 days, not since they brought him in, covered in scars, one eye cloudy, limping from an old injury that healed wrong, but still alert, still proud, still waiting. They said he wandered into the yard of a farm, miles outside of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, hundreds of miles from where he'd last been seen. He refused food from anyone, but every night he'd curl up near the fence and stare into the dark, as if waiting for a command that would never come. Shelter posted a photo online, and it exploded. Former officers commented in disbelief. One said he'd been there during the raid. Another remembered Axel from award ceremonies. A few had tears in their eyes, but then the comments shifted. Wait, wasn't that dog partnered with Nathan Raines? And just like that, the whisper started again. The man who betrayed the badge, the man who went to prison for killing his own partner during a drug raid gone wrong, except the body was never found. The partner, Axel, presumed dead. Until now, back in prison. Nathan paced the cold cell. He didn't sleep. He barely breathed. For 7 years, he'd buried every memory of that night. But now they returned, sharper than ever. Blood on the warehouse floor, the gunshots, the scream. Axel had leapt between him and the incoming fire. Then, nothing. Silence. Chaos. Betrayal. They said he panicked and shot his human partner in confusion. That Axel went rogue. That Nathan covered it up. But Nathan never saw the shooter's face, never saw Axel again, until now. He stared at the photo again. The same deep-set eyes, the same black snout, the scar on the left ear, the one Axel got when he chased down an armed suspect on I-90. It was him. No doubt. But why now? Why come back? Why now, after everything? 2 days later, a low buzz passed through the prison gates like a rumor laced with danger. A guard approached Nathan's cell with a strange expression, something between suspicion and awe. "You got a visitor," Nathan blinked. "I don't get visitors." "You do now." They marched him through 3 security doors, down a concrete hallway, and into a small visitation room. And then time stopped, because sitting quietly on the other side of the glass, still, upright, and impossibly present, was Axel, older, slower, but unmistakably him. Nathan froze. The room didn't exist anymore. The chains didn't matter. All he saw was the dog, and Axel saw him too. For the briefest moment, the dog didn't move, didn't bark, didn't react, just stared. And then, like a dam breaking, Axel stood, His tail thumped against the floor and his body trembled. Nathan raised one chained hand. Axel took a step forward and placed his scarred paw against the glass. Tears rolled silently down Nathan's cheeks. He didn't care who watched. He placed his hand over the paw. Two warriors broken by time, a bond resurrected by fate. But then, just as the moment grew warm, a sharp voice pierced the room. Time's up. Nathan didn't move. Axel didn't flinch. But the door opened behind them, and the pain returned. They dragged Nathan away, and Axel began to bark, sharp, frantic, guttural, as if trying to warn them, as if remembering something. Nathan twisted back, locking eyes with the only soul who ever knew the truth. The dog who had survived when no one else did. The dog who remembered. The bark wouldn't stop. The guards shouted. The sound echoed, and Nathan realized Axel wasn't just back. He was trying to say something, and if no one listened, it might all happen again, 7 years ago. The sound of boots clicking on the asphalt, the sharp pop of a canine door swinging open, and then the unmistakable thump of 4 powerful paws landing beside him. Nathan Raines crouched low, hand extended. The dog lowered its head, ears perked, eyes locked onto his with a silent, piercing focus. "You ready, Axel?" Nathan whispered. Axel didn't bark. He never barked unless ordered. Just nodded his head slightly, like he understood every word. Nathan smiled. This was more than a partner, more than a tool. This was his other half. Their bond had started violently. Axel wasn't supposed to have been his. 3 years earlier, the department assigned Axel to another handler, a grizzled war veteran named Brooks. But during a training op, a suspect pulled a knife. Brooks froze. Axel didn't. The dog lunged to save his partners and paid the price, a deep slash to the neck, massive blood loss. He lived, barely, but he changed after that. Refused commands. Attacked the wrong target once. Nearly got euthanized, until Nathan stepped in. He wasn't anyone special, just a clean-cut officer with a calm voice and a past he didn't talk about. No one expected him to take on the damaged dog. But the first time they locked eyes, something unspoken passed between them. Nathan understood what it meant to be discarded. Night raids, highway busts, search and rescue drills. They became legend in the department. Axel never missed a suspect, and Nathan never let him out of sight. They lived by one rule. No matter what happens, you come back to me. That rule meant everything. Until the warehouse. Until the blood. Until Axel vanished. Nathan stared at the wall of his prison cell. No window, just grey. He could still smell Axel's fur in his memories, sharp, earthy, metallic after training. He remembered the way Axel used to rest his head on Nathan's foot while they filled out paperwork late into the night. He remembered how the dog would whimper in his sleep, dreaming of something he couldn't describe. He remembered the night Axel refused to let Nathan out of the cruiser, barking uncontrollably. That was the night a drunk driver sped through the red light where Nathan would have stood. Axel always knew, and now 7 years later the dog had found his way back, across counties. Across time, through storms, fences, pain and darkness. Somehow Axel had survived, somehow he had remembered. A small dim room in the animal shelter, not open to the public. Axel lay curled up on the floor, eyes half closed, breath slow but steady. The old badge still hung from his collar, bent, rusted, stained with time. It bore only one word in worn engraving. One of the workers tried to touch him earlier. Axel growled. He hadn't let anyone near him until they brought out Nathan's old police jacket, one they had found in evidence storage. It still carried the smell, a mix of sweat, leather, gunpowder and faint citrus soap. Axel had collapsed on top of it like a soldier who'd come home from war. He hadn't moved since. A low conversation was taking place between two figures, one in uniform, the other in civilian, clothes carrying a thick manila envelope. "He won't last much longer," the officer muttered. "The dog. Vets say his kidneys are failing." The man opened the envelope and pulled out a photo. Axel, lying on the jacket. The same eyes, the same spirit. "He came all this way for one reason," the man said, "to see Nathan." The warden's jaw tightened. Nathan's a convicted felon. He's an ex-cop, the man replied, and that dog never gave up looking for him. There was silence. Then, a heavy sigh. Let me be clear. If anything about this gets public, we're both out of a job. A guard slipped a folded paper through the door. Nathan didn't move at first. Then he unfolded it, a paw print, pressed in blue ink, smudged slightly, at the edges. Beneath it, a sentence scribbled in pen. "He hasn't stopped searching for you. Do you want to see him again?" Nathan clutched the paper like it was the last thing tethering him to life, because in a way, it was. Nathan and Axel had been called to assist on a raid at an abandoned shipping warehouse. The target was a suspected cartel cell storing high-grade weapons and trafficking intel. Something felt off from the start. The doors were unlocked, the lights were still on. Nathan's gut twisted. Axel growled low. He should have pulled out. He should have waited for backup. But a scream from inside triggered the call. A rookie officer was down. Axel bolted forward. Nathan followed, and then everything went black. Gunshots, smoke, flashbangs. A single gunman emerged, wearing a department-issued vest. Nathan shouted, "Freeze!" But the man opened fire. Axel lunged to intercept one shot, then another, and then Axel was gone. The man vanished into the maze of crates. By the time backup arrived, all they found was blood, and a story no one wanted to believe. They claimed Nathan shot his partner, human and dog, but there was no human body, and no dog corpse, only Nathan, and a shattered badge soaked in blood. Nathan pressed the paw print to his lips. He had nothing left. No family, no appeals, no more chances. But Axel had found a way. The dog hadn't just survived. He had returned, across. Miles across years, all for him, for the truth, for one last promise, no matter what happens. "You come back to me." The prison gates didn't open often, but that morning, under a fog of secrecy, they cracked just enough to let one van drive through. A nondescript black transport with tinted windows and no insignia. Inside the back sat a German shepherd whose body was tired, but whose eyes refused to dim Axel. The dog didn't bark, didn't whine, just stared ahead, ears alert, muscles tight, as if his instincts knew that what lay ahead wasn't reunion, but a trap. At the same time, inside the prison clinic, Nathan sat on the edge of the examination table, cuffed at the ankles and wrists, the cold steel biting into his skin. He wasn't told why he'd been pulled from general population. He didn't ask. Hope was a dangerous thing in prison. It twisted reality. It made you believe things could still be right again. But when the doctor mentioned a special request, and when the guard who brought him down avoided eye contact, Nathan knew something was wrong. They brought Axel through the staff entrance. 2 handlers, both armed, flanked him like he was a threat, not a dying animal. He limped as he walked, but refused to be carried. His nose twitched at every turn in the corridor. He searching. The scent was faint, but it was there. Nathan. His Nathan. He pulled against the leash. The handlers tightened their grip, but then Axel stopped dead in his tracks. Hackles raised. A scent. A memory. A warning. Flashback. 7 years ago. Nathan had been called in for an internal review after the warehouse incident. The department insisted it was standard procedure, but from the first question, it was clear they weren't searching for truth. They were burying it. He was asked why he went in without backup, why the body cam cut out, why his dog turned rogue, and why the surveillance footage from the cruiser had mysteriously vanished. Nathan sat in stunned silence. Across the table, a man in a grey suit watched him with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Internal affairs. But Nathan remembered him from somewhere else, a week before the raid. That same man had shown up late at night, slipping into the office of Captain Doyle closed-door conversation. Raised voices. Nathan only caught 2 words as he passed. Warehouse, silenced. At the time, it meant nothing. Now, it meant everything. Back, in the present. Axel reached the clinic hallway, stopped. There. That door. He pulled, hard. The handlers cursed and tried to hold him back, but he lunged forward, his claws scraping across the tile until they hit steel. A bark exploded from his throat, raw, hoarse, filled with fury. Behind that door, Nathan froze. That sound, that bark. He stood. Chains rattled. "Axel," he whispered. The door clicked open. Axel burst through, breaking the leash. Time stopped. The dog skidded to a halt in front of Nathan, breath shallow, eyes wide. Then, like the years had never passed, Axel lowered his head, tail gently wagging. Nathan fell to his knees. He didn't speak, he didn't have to. Their foreheads touched, man and dog, one scarred by betrayal, the other by time, but neither broken. Not yet. Outside the clinic, behind mirrored glass. Two men watched in silence. One was the man in the grey suit, older now but still carrying that cold, calculated smirk. The other was Captain Doyle. "The dog shouldn't have made it this far," Doyle muttered. "He didn't," the man said. "He was supposed to die in the woods like the rest, but fate has a strange sense of humor." Doyle looked nervous. "They're together again. What if he remembers something?" "He's just a dog," the man said, but his fingers tapped nervously. On the table, Nathan noticed the stitches on Axel's side. Fresh, painful. His breathing was labored, his eyes slightly glazed. "You're not okay, are you?" Nathan whispered. Axel let out a soft sound, something between a whimper and a groan. Then he turned his head, toward the corner, toward the security camera. He stared at it, unblinking. Nathan followed his gaze. There, in the upper corner, a tiny black eye staring back, recording everything. That night, back in his cell, Nathan lay on the floor, unable to sleep. Axel had been taken away again, for observation. He didn't know where or why, but something clawed at his mind, a memory from the warehouse just before everything went wrong. The gunman's face. There was no mask. Nathan remembered it now, clear as day. The man in the grey suit. Internal affairs. But not just IA Nathan had seen him years before, on a different task force, one dismantled for corruption, gun running, evidence tampering, racketeering. Back then, Nathan was a rookie, too green to know who to trust. Now he knew. They had used the warehouse to store cartel weapons, under the table off the books, and when someone threatened to expose it, they needed a scapegoat. They chose Nathan. And when Axel saw what happened, they tried to kill the dog too, but Axel survived. Somehow for 7 years the K9 had run, hidden, searched, his instincts leading him through shelters, highways, forests, even captivity, until he finally reached the one person who had never turned on him. Nathan, back in the surveillance room. The man in the grey suit lit a cigarette, though he didn't smoke it. "We'll need to move things up," he said to Captain Doyle. "What about the dog?" The man looked at the screen. Axel curled up on Nathan's old jacket, barely breathing. "He's already dying." "And Rains?" The man paused, then smiled. "He won't live long enough to testify." Inside the cell, Nathan sat up suddenly, heart pounding, his gut twisted, his breath caught. Axel wasn't sent to him out of mercy. He was brought here as bait, to lure out a memory, to silence it, to bury the last living witness, canine or human. The betrayal wasn't over. It was just beginning. Night inside the prison was never truly quiet. Somewhere, a toilet flushed. A door buzzed. Footsteps echoed in a distant hallway. But inside solitary Block D, where Nathan had been transferred without explanation, it was dead silent, except for the sound of Axel's strained breathing. The dog lay in the corner of the narrow cell, ribs heaving, head low. His coat, once proud and dark, had dulled, but his eyes still held that unwavering loyalty. And tonight, something else. Focus. He was watching the door, just like he used to. Back when they were partners, back when trust still meant something. Nathan hadn't slept, not because of the cold concrete slab or the shackles, but because his mind wouldn't stop racing. He remembered every second of the warehouse that night, the way Axel had growled before they entered, like he knew something was wrong. The way the shooter raised the weapon, and didn't hesitate. It wasn't a raid, it was a setup. Nathan had only survived because Axel had taken the bullet first, and now They were both living ghosts. 14 a.m. The slot in the door opened. A tray slid in as no guard in sight. Nathan didn't touch the food, but Axel rose slowly, sniffed the tray, then whimper. He stumbled backward, ears folding, tail going low. Nathan rushed to him, even as the chains on his ankles dragged loudly across the floor. "Axel?" The dog looked at him, and in that moment, Nathan knew the food was poisoned. Not enough to kill him instantly, just enough to weaken, to silence. A slow death, easy to write off. The prison wouldn't need a paper trail. No reports. No questions. Just a dead dog. And a prisoner with no proof. Axel collapsed. Not from poison. Not yet. But from exhaustion. He curled at Nathan's feet. Nathan knelt beside him, heart pounding, tears threatening to fall. But they didn't. Instead, he did what he used to do during missions. He whispered, "Stay with me, buddy." Axel's ear twitched. That was enough. That morning a new face arrived, young, nervous, guard uniform too big for his frame. "Prisoner 4431, he muttered, avoiding Nathan's gaze. "You've got a visitor. Attorney." Nathan didn't have an attorney, at least not anymore, but the name scrawled on the logbook stopped him cold. Tess Raines, his sister. In the visitation room, a sheet of cracked plexiglass divided them. Tess looked older, stronger, fire in her eyes. Her jaw clenched as she picked up the phone. Nathan picked up his. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Neither should you." Her voice trembled. "I've been digging. For 7 years, Nate. 7. And every time I got close, a door shut. In my face. Evidence missing. Files redacted. Judges recused. It wasn't incompetence, Ma. It was a cover-up." Nathan didn't respond. Because he already knew, Tess leaned closer. They found Axel at a truck stop 2 states over, bleeding, dying, but wearing his original badge tag. Nathan's eyes widened. They tried to euthanize him. But someone scanned the microchip. It triggered an old Homeland database. Silence, and suddenly people started showing up. Men in suits, quiet ones, no badges. Nathan's voice was hoarse. He wasn't supposed to live. Tess nodded. "That dog is the only witness left, the only thing tying you to the truth." Nathan looked down. "He's dying, Tess. They poisoned his food last night." Her face went pale. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew bringing him here was a ploy." Back in the cell, Axel was gone. Nathan stepped inside and panicked. Then he saw the scratch marks on the floor. Small puddles of blood. They had taken him. Not to the infirmary. Not to the kennels. Somewhere else. Somewhere darker. Inside, a disused basement wing of the prison. 2 men stood over a steel table. Axel lay sedated, a tube in his leg. "He's no use now," Doyle muttered. "The poison's doing its job." The man in the grey suit said nothing. He simply pulled out a syringe, thick with black liquid. "Let's finish it." But as he raised it, Axel's eyes snapped open. In one instant, instincts overtook sedation. With a violent twist of his body, the German shepherd lunged off the table, ripping the IV from his leg. The syringe flew from the man's hand. He screamed as Axel's teeth clamped down, not on flesh, but on the folder sitting nearby. The case file. Blood dripped from his muzzle as he ran, weak, limping but determined. The grey suit shouted, "Get him!" But Axel vanished into the prison corridor. Case file dragging under his jaw, blood smearing the floor in his path. Meanwhile, Tess confronted the warden. She'd printed emails, phone records, surveillance gaps. She slammed the folder down on his desk. "I have enough here to make your office look like a crime scene." The warden didn't blink. "You're trespassing. I'm a licensed attorney. And under Code 207B, I can subpoena this entire facility if I suspect attempted murder." She leaned forward. "And I do." Nathan wasn't in his cell anymore. The guards who came for him didn't say where they were taking him, but as they turned down the south corridor, Nathan realized they weren't going to the yard, they were going underground toward the furnace wing, abandoned, no cameras, a place where things could disappear. But then, barking, faint, echoing, getting louder, then a crash. Down the hallway, a blur. Flash of black and tan, Axel bloodied, but alive, dragging the case file in his teeth. He skidded to a stop in front of Nathan, dropping the file at his feet. Nathan stared at the folder. Inside, photos, timestamps, a still frame from the cruisers, missing surveillance, the man in the grey suit holding the murder weapon. Proof. Undeniable. Axel had brought it back. He'd remembered where it was hidden. The old filing room beneath the infirmary, the one place untouched by the sweep. Nathan picked up the folder with shaking hands. The guards froze. Then, a voice echoed down the hall. Tess, followed by 2 federal agents. Guns raised, badges out. Drop the weapons. Step away from the prisoner. The pay. Guards complied instantly. The agents moved in, cuffed Doyle. And the man in the grey suit? Gone. He had vanished into the walls like smoke. But the damage was done, and the truth was out. Nathan dropped to his knees. Axel collapsed beside him. The file, still beneath his paw, Nathan whispered into the fur. You did it, boy. You saved us. Axel's eyes fluttered, but his tail thumped once against the floor. Then, silence. Axel wasn't moving. Not a twitch, not a breath, just the faint trace of blood around his mouth, and the case file he had given his life to retrieve. Nathan cradled, the dog's head in his hands, whispering broken sounds that couldn't form words. His chest rose and fell in heaves, the pain inside him bubbling up like molten metal. They could drag him away, lock him back up, but they would not take Axel. Not again. He's alive, Tess shouted. We need a medic, now. The federal. Agents knelt beside Axel, one checking for a pulse. Seconds passed, a beat, a flicker beneath the furred chest. He's breathing barely. They moved quickly, carefully lifting Axel onto a board. Nathan rose to his feet, still shackled, still weak, but no longer silent. Take him, he rasped. Save him! Tess turned toward the agents. He's coming with us. The lead. Agent looked between the bloodied corridor and the trembling dog, then nodded. They wheeled Axel out as the prison roared awake behind them. Sirens blared. Lights flashed, but the man in the grey suit was still gone, slipping through legal cracks and emergency exits, vanishing like smoke through the system. The warden was placed on administrative leave. Doyle, the corrupt lieutenant, was arrested, and Nathan. He was put into protective custody while the Department of Justice reopened the entire case. 6 days later, in a private veterinary ICU north of the city, Axel lay on a table wrapped in heated blankets. Machines beeped softly beside him. His body was stitched, cleaned, stabilized, but his heart, it was fading. Tess stood by the glass, watching as Nathan entered in plain clothes, no shackles. He had been granted temporary release to say goodbye. Axel's ears barely lifted, but they did. Nathan stepped closer, placing a trembling hand on the dog's head. I thought we were done, he whispered. That day in the warehouse, I thought it ended there. His voice cracked. I buried you, Axel. In my mind, I buried you. He pulled something from his pocket, a frayed old chew rope, still stained, still torn. Axel's nose twitched. Slowly, weakly, his paw moved toward it. Nathan smiled through tears. You remembered. Flashback. 8 years ago. A younger Nathan knelt beside a crate, opening it for the first time. A tiny black and tan pup peeked out, tail wagging, eyes filled. With wonder and fear, Nathan held out the rope. Let's start with trust. The pup took it in his mouth and never let go. Back in the present, Axel let out a small rattled whine. Nathan pressed his forehead to the dog's. They wanted you to forget, he murmured. But you remembered everything. His voice softened. And now I remember too. A long silence. The monitors beeped slower now, softer. A vet entered, silent, she whispered. His organs are failing. He held on as long as he could. Nathan nodded. No protests, no anger. Just a quiet understanding. He knelt one last time beside the only partner who never betrayed him. I love you, he whispered. Axel's tail moved once, and then it stopped. The room froze. One final beep. And then nothing. The screen went flat. The air collapsed. Tess turned away, hands trembling as she wiped her face. Nathan didn't move, didn't speak. He simply reached out and placed the chew rope into Axel's still paw. "Mission complete," he said, and then he stood, alone. 2 days later, a courtroom was packed, not for a trial but for a ruling. The judge's voice echoed, "The court finds Nathan Kessler not guilty on all counts. The conviction is vacated. He is free to go." Murmurs spread like wind through the gallery. Cameras flashed, but Nathan didn't react. He simply stared at the empty seat beside Tess. Axel's badge tag lay there, polished, framed in glass. That night, Nathan returned to the place where they first trained, the empty K9 field, long overgrown and forgotten. He walked to the old sandpit and buried the rope there, just like Axel once did during play. He stood in the moonlight, silent, for a long time, then saluted. One final time. Back at the vet clinic late that same night, the receptionist was locking up when something made her stop. A sound, a shuffle. She turned, and there, at the entrance, a small group of officers, each holding the leash of a retired K9 German Shepherds, 6 in total, silent, still, waiting. She opened the doors. They walked in slowly, surrounding the case file that had been placed on a memorial display beside Axel's ashes. Not one of them barked. They just stood guard, like they understood, like they knew. One by one, they laid down around it, a silent watch. For a brother lost. The cemetery was quiet. No taps, no gunfire, no flag folding, just silence. A small marble headstone stood beneath the tall oak tree, not among the human graves, but on a patch of land beside them. It bore a simple engraving, K9, Axel loyal unto death, mission complete. Beneath it, a bronze badge glinted softly in the light. The sun wasn't rising. It wasn't setting. Time didn't exist here, only memory, only stillness. Nathan stood alone. No cameras, no press, just him. A civilian jacket covered the scars still healing beneath. His eyes no longer held the fire of vengeance or confusion, only loss and peace. In one hand, he held the folded rope, the one Axel had gripped as a pup, the one he'd buried beside the body. He hadn't expected to dig it back up, but something about holding it again felt right, final. He knelt beside the grave. "I don't know what you saw in me," he said quietly. "But you never stopped believing." His voice cracked. "I stopped believing. In justice, in people, in myself." He looked at the headstone as if Axel could still hear him. "But you didn't." He placed the rope at the base of the stone and stepped back. A car idled behind him. Tess stood leaning on the door, arms folded, eyes damp. "You don't have to go back," she said. Nathan turned to her, shook his head softly. "It's not about having to, it's about finishing what we started. You already finished it." "No," he said. He did. A pause. "Now I carry it." 1 week later, a quiet conference room inside the State Department building. Nathan sat across from 3 men and 1 woman, federal directors, high-ranking brass, a military liaison. Tess stood beside him, handing over Axel's case file. The one he died for, the one they tried to bury. The official nodded as he opened it. Page after page of altered reports, forged evidence, secret transfers, encrypted logs. The proof of a system that had eaten itself from the inside. "We'll open full investigations," the director said. "And the men who ran it?" "Some have. Retired. Some are buried behind walls no badge can penetrate. But some are still watching." Nathan's voice was quiet. "Then tell them." "Tell them what?" He stood. "That a dog made it home." That afternoon, Nathan returned to the field, but not alone. 6 retired K9s stood around him, each with their new handlers, officers who had asked specifically to be paired with dogs that had known Axel, not because they were better, but because they had seen loyalty and loss. A little girl stood at the fence, hair in braids. A soft toy dog in her arms. She didn't speak, just watched. Nathan walked over. "You like dogs?" he asked. She nodded. "Want to pet one?" She hesitated, then pointed to the largest shepherd, the one with a scar near its eye. That one. Nathan smiled. That one's called Ghost. He doesn't always let people touch him. The girl didn't flinch. She walked forward slowly. Ghost didn't move. Then, suddenly, sat down, calm, waiting. She reached out and touched his head. The dog nuzzled her palm. Nathan's eyes filled with something unspoken. A full circle, a future born from the pain of the past. Nathan sat at his old apartment, now emptied, sparse, no photos, no furniture, just a box in the middle of the room. Inside were Axel's things, his collar, his service medal, a worn training vest, and beneath it all, a notebook. Nathan opened it. The first page held Axel's intake sheet, the next, training. Notes, photos, evaluations, but somewhere in the middle, something unfamiliar, a hand-drawn sketch, a crude picture of a man and a dog under a tree. No signature, no caption. But Nathan recognized it. Axel had once been used in a therapy session with child witnesses. One of them had drawn this, given it, to the unit. He had forgotten until now. Nathan stared at it for a long time. Then, slowly, he taped it to the wall. The only thing on it. One image. Two silhouettes. Together. Back at the cemetery. A small ceremony. No flags. No speeches. Just 6 K9s standing in silence around Axel's grave. Each placed something at the base. A tag, a ribbon, a piece of uniform. Then, slowly, they all sat, facing the stone. Still, unmoving. Nathan watched from the hilltop, Tess at his side. No words, no movement, only silence. Final image, a wide shot of the cemetery at dusk. One grave, 6 dogs, one man standing in the distance, and a soft breeze that moves only the leaves. They never forget who we are, even when we do.